So I wanted this to be a follow-up to the last video that I did regarding melodies, and this is particularly if you have faceplant or something that has a bunch of modulators in it. Now, the benefit of this is that you can contain everything within the patch. The downside is that you don't actually get the MIDI, you only get the audio. But we're going to be taking some concepts that I have either I have shown in the past or that Kilohertz has shown in the past, and seeing how we can take that one step further. So if you're brand new to the channel, my name is Alckemy. Welcome. Today we're going to be exploring faceplant and getting some interesting timbral changes just at the click of a button. Push of a button? I don't know, doesn't matter. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want Kilohertz at a 10% discount, check out the link tree that will lead you to my affiliate link down below. I don't do very many affiliate links, but Bitwig and Faceplant in particular are definitely some really strong things to consider. All right, so what we have is a very basic sound. It's just a sine wave with some reverb on it. Yay. Now, one thing that we can do in order to get this to start doing something more interesting is we can turn the level down and grab an LFO, kind of like so, and we can right click this and type in 100. Now what you'll see is the level of this is moving up and down, so. But what we really want to do is open this up and move this over to the left, and then create some kind of envelope shape, maybe more so like an ADSR. And if we take a listen to this and play a couple of notes, check this out. You make me something, move like a freak, right? No, I'm just kidding. So depending on how you play your notes, if you're playing a chord or something within the interval, which at this case it's 1 hertz, if we were to set this to a sync at 85 BPM, depending on how you play the cluster of notes within that time frame is the rhythm that you're going to get. So. And that's a really cool way in order to just get some really interesting stuff, especially if you know how to play chords or whatever, and you can get some really cool rhythms with that. If you play them all at once, then you'll get this repeat of kind of, I guess, chord clusters, chords. But this is one very basic way in order to get, you know, some interesting rhythm. Now, regarding pitch and finding melodies, because sometimes that's not always easy to do, there's this little thing called a remap, and we use remap for a lot of different things. You probably have seen this on the main Kilohertz website or YouTube channel, is that we can set things to a specific scale, sort of, by attaching this to the master pitch or to the oscillator here. So I'm just going to set this to the master pitch, and I'm going to set this to 24. And what we're going to do is come back to this so that way whenever we play something, it's going to kind of move up and down. Now, if I were to just play these keys, it's not going to do anything. You can see that this isn't moving. And so what we need to do is set this into a modulator in order to get something that's actually going to play in scale. So I am going to grab another LFO. And if I were to just attach this here, then you're going to see that the pitch of this is going to be sweeping up and down. That's like one of those like 70s commercials or something that's like doing a transition or whatever. So obviously if we were to open this up and set this to this guy, then we can actually draw in our own little melody. And if we just hit one note, then it's going to do this for us. Now before I hit this, you're going to see that this is moving extremely fast. So what we might want to do is set this to sync and then turn the speed down. Let's just see what that sounds like. You know, and of course, for whatever reason, if you don't like this melody, then you can change it and do something different with it if you want to. So maybe something kind of like so. And you can always play different keys and stuff with that too. And it's going to jump all over the place if you decide to play chords, but sometimes it could be kind of cool. So typically speaking, you only want to play one note with this. Now, this is great, and this is really cool. And something else that you can consider is that if you want this to kind of combine in the way that we were talking about from before, then we can turn this down and we can add these two together in order to play plucks that are going to be more percussive. And now suddenly this sounds a little bit cooler, right? as opposed to just the sustain, because everything is split up and has its own space for the voice to come out. Now, something that you can do if you just want it to be random is you can set this to a random, and we can move this over here and just map this as well. So we can go like this. And now whenever this hits on every fourth note, you're going to see that this is going to jump around. So and if you're recording, then sometimes this can be a great answer for you to find something that's interesting. That's really cool. So that's all fine and dandy, but what if we wanted to take this a step further? The next thing that I'm going to do is we are going to actually grab an LFO table, and we are going to send this again into this at 100% and grab this. And what this is going to do is allow us to morph in between different shapes. So obviously this is a saw wave, and so if I were to just press this, then you're going to see that it's going to descend. And sometimes that can actually be kind of cool. Now, one thing that I want to do just to make this a little bit more interesting is kind of find a little bit of a middle ground that's in between. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this random here, and instead of sending this into this guy, we're actually going to set the rate of this to 0 and then change the phase with this. And now what this is going to do is it's going to jump around this curve in order to kind of fine tune a specific melody. So and if I don't like this, then I can actually just move this table. It's actually pretty cool. Now, of course, if we wanted to, we can hop into this and change the wavetable into just about anything. One thing that we could also do is just choose between one of these. But if you wanted to kind of try to combine some of this, then perhaps one thing to consider is by using the pen tool. And if we were to use the pen tool and turn the magnet on, then we can actually create steps. So if I were to go here and create some of this stuff kind of like so, then we can move in between different melodies or different positions of here that are going to be a little bit more finite. Now what I want to do first is, now that I have this, I want to hit done, and I want to make sure that none of this is highlighted and click on the opposite side, and then we will do the same thing, make sure that that's on, and we're going to start from the bottom and try to do something very different than the first table. That's really important, because otherwise if you morph this, it doesn't really do a whole lot. But we're going to try this and see if we can get it right on the first time and just see what that does. And we're going to hit done. So if you look on this side, we've got this. If you look on this side, we've got this. So now what I'm going to do is grab these two, and I'm going to crossfade this, and I'm going to go spectral. And sometimes you're going to end up getting some wonky stuff, but the more that you have these different steps in between, the more that's going to be more smooth. And what's cool is that you can get some really interesting shapes, kind of like this. I don't know, that's pretty trippy. So the other thing that you could do is just have a completely blank wavetable and do the same thing, and it will kind of just move the levels in between. But I don't know, I like making this shape because it looks pretty sick, and it's like little flames or something. So now that we have something like that, though, we can get some really interesting movement on here to create these patterns that are going to be random, but within the confinements of a wavetable. Pretty neat, right? So even though I wanted to set this to random, that's just if you wanted it to be somewhat in between to where it's kind of playing the same thing, but you're getting a little bit of variation in between. That's a nice little bounce. But one other thing that you can do on here, if you want to kind of just make this jump around to something very specific, is you can actually grab another LFO table, or you can do just another LFO as a whole. So we can kind of just do the same thing to where we're creating some different melodies here, kind of like so. And that seems good to me. Let's go ahead and hit this and make this go to 16. And now what we can do is the same thing to where we jump this on the phase. And so as opposed to just having a single melody, we can actually morph this depending on what we play. Let's say we're playing a chord or something, or even just a single note. And now this will jump in between wherever we set this. We can also change the speed of how fast this arpeggiator plays, or how fast this melody plays. So if I were to just hit a C, right? And you can come up with some pretty cool stuff. So as a quick bonus, one thing that I am going to show you is how to just make this a little bit more realistic and get some more interest out of these, because movement is movement is movement. That's what we always say in martial arts and tricking. But if we can add a little bit of timbral characteristic to this, then maybe we can make it a little bit more interesting. So one thing that I'm going to do is add another analog, and we're just going to take the output of this and add it to the phase of this. And with the phase, if we just leave it on, then it's going to sound pretty bland. Sorry, I had to do it. But what's really cool is that we can actually pitch this up to a random arbitrary harmonic. And obviously it's out of key now. So if we were to take this and actually set this on here, then we can change the speed of this, or the shape rather. That would probably be the best way to go. And just set that here. And so now, as long as these two are matching, then this is going to add a little bit of metallic timbre into this. So now we're adding a little bit of extra timbre to that, almost like we're adding another instrument just because of how the FM, or the phase modulation rather, is interacting with this. And I guess if you wanted to add another layer, then we can also do this with AM. So we can turn this up by quite a bit. And instead of doing this, I'm just going to set this to like 19 semitones. And we are going to grab another LFO, because I want these to kind of be independent of each other. I don't want them to all be the exact same. You can if you want it to all sound in sync, but sometimes doing it differently will give you some interesting movement with this. But I'm going to set this to, not that, set this to here. So now whenever this hits, we're going to be getting some different volume and amplitude modulation with this to create a more, I don't know, interesting arpeggiator. That's cool. Let's go ahead and add some delay. This is really cool. So something else that we can consider, there's a bunch of different ways to do this, but adding a fifth or adding an octave either up or down can also be super beneficial. So if we were to take this, and you can see that this is kind of moving itself up and down, one thing that we could potentially do in order to make this have a little bit more interest, I guess, is set this to sync, and we're going to set this to 2 bars. And what we're going to do is duplicate this LFO. I believe that this is going to the main level on here, and we don't want this to be on this one. What we want to do is to move this over and set this to its own level. And the reason why is because we're actually going to set this one to a second harmonic, or an octave, if you will, and we are going to grab this guy and set it to the amount of this LFO. Now, one thing that's really important with this is that whenever we hit a note, this is going to re-trigger the LFO. See? So what we want to do is instead change this to never. And while this is on never, it's going to slowly creep itself in whenever this moves up, as you can see here, which might be really nice. So check this out. That's really nice. So one final thing that we can consider is if we were to add a snap heap, then this can actually give us more voices. Because in theory, what we can do is use something like a pitch shifter in order to create some kind of chord. So it might be wise to try to stick with octaves, or maybe just 7 semitones or a fifth or 19 semitones at the most. But just as a means of getting some interesting timbre, let's go ahead and create a parallel chain. We're going to turn this on and send this into a limiter, and we're just going to grab a pitch shifter that is going to be changed to +7. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly mix this in just to see what it sounds like, and sometimes we might end up getting something that sounds cool, sometimes we might not. So let's make sure that the mix is on and see if we can get something kind of cool. So maybe if we were to create another parallel chain, then we can actually create a duality between these. So I am going to set this here, and I am going to try not to fry your brains, but what I will do is we're going to grab an LFO just for the sake of being consistent and having a set pattern. And I'm going to create just some kind of sequence here, kind of like so, to where this one is going to go down, and this one is going to go up to, like, I think just like 50%, I want to say. So we'll just set that down. Now obviously this is moving way too fast, so we're going to set this to sync and then change this to never re-trigger. I don't know why Kilohertz does that, don't worry. And then we're going to set this to a really slow rate, maybe 8 to 4. So now whenever this comes in, you'll see that we're going to have some motion in between these that are going to kind of toggle in between. So with just using some basic sine waves and some really easy, I guess, thinking outside of the box, we can create a really complex melody maker in order to find some piece of inspiration. Now, obviously with this patch, we didn't go super crazy and super ham, but hopefully you can see that this is a great starting point in which to find some interesting possibilities from. For me personally, I always would prefer to have things in MIDI, But at the same time, you know, having access to a patch that just kind of sounds good like that, no matter what notes you play, can be a really interesting approach to being like, oh, this is cool. Well, maybe I can add, you know, some distortion to this, or like open this up with a filter, or just drench it in reverb, paste that into audio, reverse it, and you know, now I'll have this really cool cloud of a pad or something. There's a lot of different directions that you can take this. It's just a starting point in which to find, you know, where you want to go next. But in any case, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you indulging in this video with me. And if you like the video, then leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I'm getting close to 20K. I might hit 20K by the end of the year, thanks to you all. And yeah, hit me up. Check out alckemy.com if you want to see what presets I have to offer. Thanks, everybody.